Thank you very much for your summary. We are on time, so we would like to continue to the discussion. We have received some opinions on our chat box, so I would like to introduce that. So Asbi-san from Sapecast. So this concerns the transparency and then participation by the citizens. That's mentioned by Eve-san. I heard some noise. Are we okay? The Japanese from the 31st of March started the measurement activities. So the data collected should be used for decision-making process, the data measured by the third party. So for example, the civic group, they take measurements, and I personally also take measurements. And in Japan, I think several groups are quite competent in taking measurements, and some of them are semi-expert in terms of measuring the radiation. So those information data collected by the third party, for example, the civil groups, I think the government should perhaps consider referencing those data and reflecting in the decision-making process. We also received information from we received the comment from Mr. Ted Lazo, and he has been attending the dialogue many times. So OECD NIA, he's the member of the OECD NIA, and he was in charge of the dialogue, and he had been representing OECD NIA in the past dialogues. I think he is now retired, but he is today participating online. And he has pointed out the importance of having and sharing the discussions, but when it comes to dialogues, we haven't had many opportunities to have representations of the government and local governments. In case of Date City, when we hold this in Date City, I think there were representatives from the Date City, but I think in terms of the representations of the authorities, government, it's not very quite high. So perhaps we should involve the governments, local governments, and the national government representatives. Are there any other comments that we would like to introduce now?
And also, we had a questions about the invitation that was given to Professor Han from Korea. Should we? So I would like to ask Ms. Yoshida to ask about why the invitation extended to Professor Han. Thank you for that question. I am Yoshida from the Japan Association, and we were actually the organization that extended the invitation to Professor Han. And as I mentioned, our association has in many ways various kind of exchange programs with our Korean counterpart, and as a result, we have had six symposiums and workshops. And Professor Han, there were occasions where we asked her to give the presentation, and we were able to learn from her the situation in South Korea and what the general public was saying about the Fukushima power plant accident, and which we did not know about. And Professor Han showed us, and she has been dealing with this kind of issue. So we felt that it was quite valuable to be listening to what she had to say. And that is why we extended the invitation to Professor Han. I think it was a very good decision for inviting her. Thank you very much. So in Japan, there has been media reports about the reaction from South Korea to the accident. And I think many people in Japan was wondering also why this kind of reaction has been in South Korea. And that is why we invited Professor Han to this dialogue. Are there any other questions in the chat box? I think there was a question to Ms. Yoshida in the chat about the, it says safety of the tritium water. The question says that there might be a misunderstanding that it is safe. So in order to avoid this kind of misunderstanding, perhaps we should put it in a different way of expression. So Ms. Yoshida, Professor Yoshida, would you like to respond? Thank you for that question. So the presentation, we were not giving sufficient time. So I did not have the time to fully explain the issue of safety of the tritium water. And in my presentation, I mentioned about the fisherman's comment, Mr. Kikuchi, which was based on the safety as explained by the government. And I'm sorry that I kind of abbreviated, I left out some information. And I just wanted you to know that there were diverse opinions. And in this discussion today, it is not necessarily to discuss about whether the treated water is safe or not safe, but rather to seek way forward. Thank you very much. So often in today's session, we have said it is not about for or against, but rather much more beyond that. And the participants also mentioned this. But however, we have to come to a conclusion. And if we say that this is not about for or against, then we cannot really decide anything. But focus on this was that they ideally this kind of discussion should have been made before the decision was actually made. So of course we do need to come to a conclusion at some point, but we were not able to have that discussion before the decision. So that is why we try to organize this opportunity for such discussion today. So I guess that is all from the chat box. So we do have time still. We would like to ask comments from the people at the venue, the panelists. Mr. Kano, would you volunteer to go first, or would you like to go last? So, Mr. Kano, you have volunteered to go first, so please. So I made a presentation about tourism, and I'm not familiar with the scientific material, and I felt that the tritium water was basically safe. But of course, people have different perspective, and I was able to learn about other people's attitudes. And with respect to rumors, this is invisible, and this has really struck me once again. And for me, as a tourist in the tourist industry, there are many challenges still in how we address this kind of invisible effects of rumors. And of course, we have to make a living, so it's very difficult to balance everything. And so we need to gradually increase the number of tourists and gradually. So thank you for letting me participate today. Thank you very much for today's forum. I was able to make many discoveries by listening to other people's views. And of course, my position is one that is responsible for making some kind of a decision. So I would like to take back your views, try and come to a conclusion. And if you are placed in a, if you would also consider, if you were placed in a similar position as me, what decision would you come to? And I listened to Mr. Iveru about the process of where the leading up to the decision making, and that was quite instructive. And today we were not talking about whether we were for or against, but more on the process of how we come to a decision. So I learned a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you for this forum. And I usually work in the city office. And I'm happy to have been given this opportunity to make a present to have a discussion in the symposium. And we also had, it was good that we had a representation from Iwaki, Futaba, and Soma, each of the region. We have different circumstances in the three regions, but we were able to have different comments from each of the three regions. And also we had the participation from various experts in a different, who has different views. And they were, of course, experts on decision-making process. And I think this kind of multiple angle of looking at an issue was a very good experience and this made it very good symposium for me. So a decision has been made to discharge the treated water into the ocean. And instead of saying that we cannot do anything about it because the decision has already been made, but rather we can sort of make a post-action assessment, I think, and we can consider whether as citizens we can create a structure for making such kind of a post discharge assessment. And I wish that I was in a position to make that happen. And it is for me, as a person, to create such a kind of platform is very difficult, but it was very good that we were able to share on the need for having such a platform. Thank you very much. This is Yoshida. Thank you very much to the organizers. I have been participating in dialogue for many times, and of course, we have had not this dialogue for quite a long time, and I felt that this kind of dialogue is very important, not in Japan, not only in Japan, but also around the world. And I think this is a common understanding among all of the participants. So we cannot make our decision within a limited circle of communities. We can come to understand other people's views, and that will then create a sort of like a chemical reaction that will change my perspective. So I hope that the organizers would organize this kind of similar dialogue in the future, and I'd like to thank the organizers. Good morning for the participants from France, and I hope you take it easy after this forum. As mentioned by Professor Yoshida, we were not being able to hold this dialogue for quite a long time, and we did have some technical problems, from which we can learn from. Next time, we hope that we will be able to have the normal kind of dialogue where people actually come together in person and listen to each other's views. And we had a participation today from young people, and which was quite valuable. And this kind of involvement of younger generation is something good. Older people like me might be gone in 20 or 30 minutes. So this kind of transfer to the younger generation, I think, is a very good thing. And I hope the young people will continue to participate. Can we ask a comment from Mr. Yves Ruru about today's symposium?
Yeah, yes, it's really a great pleasure to be with you today, even if I'm far from you. And I see by our discussion and exchange that I think everywhere in the world we have in the same expected. The citizen expect the same thing: more transparency, more information, more diversity on point of view on the table, more alternative before to take a decision, take time before to take a decision, and try to involve local citizen and young generation. It's really an important meeting and really a great pleasure for me. I learned a lot by your questions and by your expected. And if you have the possibility, feel free to come to see us in France, and we have a great pleasure to share with you our experience. It's an experience. We have the chance to have a frame. That doesn't mean that we succeed everything, but we have a place where to discuss. And I'm completely agree that we are not in the field of we are for or against nuclear activity. No, we are all of us together around the table to find solution for nuclear issues, but not. And so thanks again for your invitation.
Thank you very much. Now we'd like to also invite comments from Dr. Onuma from Hokkaido. Well, today's dialogue was quite inspiring, and stimulating. I used a lot of brain because we had various perspectives, local, regional, and national and international. We have to really look at issues from various perspectives. So it was very much exciting. And at the same time, I have a regret. And what I mean by that is until the last minute, I wanted to participate locally, physically. I was willing to pay the traveling fee on my own. I have been thinking about this until last night, and I decided to participate online. Of course, even through online, you can speak with many people, and it was wonderful. However, if I'm present physically, I can also feel the truth. So I felt very strongly about that. So first thing I like to do is to eat the surf clams and stay at the tourist inn in Fukushima and experience that firsthand. You feel that you understand that by listening to others, but unless you actually experience that, you do not get the full understanding. And there could be a lot of the things you are able to discuss during the break, but I'm sitting alone in my place during the break. So maybe I am regretting strongly that I should have went to the venue physically. And it's been almost 2 years since the last time I visited the place, but every time I go there, I see a less volume of black plastic bags. And once you go there after the first time in a while, you can also see a green field, debris being removed. So if you go there physically, personally, you can also understand the fresh understanding. So I felt strongly once again that actual first-hand experience is also very important. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, we'd like to proceed to the closing remarks. Well, once again, for all of the participants and the audience, thank you very much for staying with us for a long time. And in the past, we had the 2-day sessions, but as Onuma-san mentioned at the very end, we used our brain quite seriously, and it was quite tiring, but that was also a good thing about this. And we had this dialogue for the first time in a long time, but also situation changes a lot over a 10-year period. But now I feel that at the end of today's session, I feel it was good that we decided to host this session. And Dr. Onuma mentioned that he is regretting not coming here personally. And Mr. Kano could have served his meals at his the Japanese inn to Dr. Onuma. And previously in our dialogue, we've been discussing different topics, but this time the issue of treated water is a long-term issue. Therefore, if necessary, I'd like to also consider having a dialogue on these topics. And as discussed today, because this is the long-term issue, and not only examination, but verification after the things happened is also necessary. So we'd like to, we hope to continue this dialogue. But once again, thank you very much for all of your collaboration today. And we also had the simultaneous interpretation service and IRSN in France also supported for the service. And thanks to that, even though this event was also a first trial for using the interpretation service and also having an online. So I'd like to also apologize for inconvenience that we have experienced in the morning sessions. But online, there is also a benefit of those people who lives in remote areas and are unable to attend physically, but they can also take part in our session. So even if Lulu, he is living in overseas, but he was able to make the presentation because this was held online. And as Mr. Kono Takahiko, he also supported the operation as a volunteer. Thank you very much. And as a host, we had Michiya Sasaki. He also worked as a volunteer. Thank you very much for your help. And as a co-host, co-sponsor, we'd like to also thank JHPS and SRA, Society for Risk Analysis of Japan. And also we'd like to thank the simultaneous interpreters. Every time we have a dialogue, we cover diverse topics, and it would be very interesting for speakers and the discussant. However, it might be a lot of the effort on the part of the interpreters, so we'd like to thank the interpreters. We had a series of the troubles and apologize for the inconvenience, but thanks to their effort, we were able to be connected with participants from overseas. Thank you very much. And last but not least, we have prepared some questionnaire or survey, and we like to send this survey form to all of the participants and the audiences. So please kindly fill out those surveys so that we can improve our future operation of the dialogue. Are there anything you forgot to share with us? All right. So now I'd like to bring this session to an end. Thank you very much for staying with us until the end.